a lot of people have become subject matter experts, and you may include yourself in this category, but it does prove a challenge sometimes to get your message across, to stand up, speak confidently, share your modality in a way that you know your message is being received. So how do we do that? How do we close that gap? Today, I have an amazing guest who works specifically in that area and with people like us to help us share the information we have, stand up confidently, and posture.
Welcome to the Crystal Zinn Podcast. I believe our bodies are a living map of the entire universe. All the answers reside within. Remember, you are sovereign, whole, and infinitely valuable. And the best gift we can give to the world is our own healing. Join me as we explore holistic tools, spiritual practices, and paradigms that are shifting the way people experience life, business, and relationships. I love to share education on the most recent medical research and cutting-edge technology on anatomy, neurology, trauma, development, and more to give us a foundation in understanding how to align, utilize, and upregulate our physical systems. Ultimately, this podcast is a witness and support to people on their journey of remembering, an inspiration for all of us to keep going, and a reminder that we are not alone.
Welcome to the Crystal Zinn Podcast. I'm really excited about today's episode because I have a person on who I have been working with and collaborating and has helped me in these specific areas we are going to talk about today over the last year. So, welcome, Robbie.
Thank you for having me.
It is Robbie Law.
Yes, Robbie Law.
The Robbie Law. I'm so excited about this. And as always, before we hear all of your brilliance and magic, we do tune in. So if you're in a place that's safe to do so and you're listening to this episode, go ahead and close your eyes. Feel the very next inhale fill up to the bottom of your lungs and the top of your collarbones. And then ride the exhale down. Again. Set aside any intentions or expectations for what you're doing right now and what you're about to listen to, and just come back to presence. The only place that miracles can occur is in complete presence and mindfulness in this moment. And then feel into your heart space as you take deeper breaths and ask yourself, do I trust that that is true? Do I trust that the right words and the right events will unfold for me the moment I need them? And then take one more clearing breath in through your nose and this time out through your mouth. Don't be afraid to make a sound. When you feel ready, come back, blink your eyes open, and join us today on our episode on posture. What is posture? You might be asking. You're about to find out.
I feel like I'm sitting in better posture now because of our little preparation that we just did right there.
Amazing.
I love that. Yeah. You challenged me right in that moment. Like I was in there going, do I really believe this? Do I really believe this for me? So thank you for doing that. That's
do I want to believe that?
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to. I didn't go through that. I was not going through do I want. I was like, yes, I want to believe it. I was like, do I? You know, I don't know which one's better.
Well, if you can't get yourself fully there, it's kind of like affirmations we always talk about, and they can be good, but they can also be pretty dangerous and can cause the opposite. If you just go in, full throttle saying, I am strong, but you don't really believe it gnostically, or you have some things hanging you up, it's better to enter gently. Do I want to believe that I'm strong? And then you can start attempting.
A great transition into what we're going to talk about today. Because you just talked about something called the posture gradient and kind of getting someone to the point where they feel that way. And so that was partly my question was, where is this at on what I call the gradient? And you and I have talked about the gradient in our sessions together and prepared preparing your webinar, and whenever we do an event together, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
where's the gradient on this? You know, because I have you come into my business events where business people are like, all right, let's get to work, you know, let's have a meeting, let's get on Zoom, and then they come and sit down and go, close your eyes, take a deep breath in through your nose, and when they get in that state, that's a different feeling for them. Like a lot of people aren't used to it, and so you bring people into that setting and you kind of raise them up the gradient because you learn. Like even when you do this on a podcast and you have people go through that, not a lot of podcasts do that. You know, and it is such a great tool to be able to get us started. But if you can really truly understand that gradient and how that works, it's a great way to build your own confidence.
Oh, I love that. And that is also really important frame up and language. So to start with, so let's start there. So people can understand what we're talking about and have a way to talk about it and label it. And that's what I think you do best, is I conceptually do understand a lot of things from my training and my practices, but didn't really have a great way to talk about it or frame it. So what is the gradient that you're talking about? That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, the gradient, the way I see it, is the distance between the information and understanding that we have and the audience's level of understanding and need for that information and desire for that information. So I always use the same example my mentor uses. He's like, you know, if you go into a room of musicians, you go into that room, you can sell them anything related to music, but if you're trying to sell them like a paintbrush, you're in the wrong room because those are musicians. But you go into a room of painters, now you can sell them a paintbrush. So you look at what people want and what they need, and then where you're at. And this is where subject matter experts, people that are mastery level skill set, 10,000 plus hours, focused on their modality, learned, you know, from every certification. I think of like all these certifications you have, and I'm like, the amount of time it takes to fly out there, to sit in the class, to go through it, to think about it, to carry it with you, to use it in a practice, all of that. Gosh, you learn so much. And some people just like dial in, you know, like I know some people, they're like essential oilers, and they're like, they know every molecule and every single thing and every constituent inside the oil. And they know that because that's their practice. And there are people that value that information so much that they would say, come to an event and speak. Come tell us about it. And that person would say, oh, no, I couldn't do that because, you know, I might know a lot about it, but I'm not a speaker and I'm not this. And I couldn't do that. And they lack the confidence to go, oh, I could do that. And if I share this information that I've been so focused on for the last 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, however long that you really focused on it, well, that information is so valuable to some people that you could really help those individuals. And typically people that know a lot about their subject, they want to help people. But it's not typical that they get, I shouldn't say it's not typical, that's a bad framework. It's important that they realize that they have that capability if they want it through practice and doing certain things that get them ready to start sharing. So then they can share their gradient in a much easier way.
So you would call them high gradient.
Yeah.
But they need to produce the information low gradient.
Yeah. So it's like a PhD, you know, level of information. But when you come into a class of 5th grade level understanding, you can't teach a PhD level. You have to come down to that level and teach a little bit higher than they're at and help bring them up. But if you come at them with a PhD, that's high gradient. That's where it's really high gradient. So some of the things that you teach, you know, Reiki and Qigong.
Yeah, and anatomy. Someone just said that to me. That's how the last facilitator actually introduced me last weekend when she brought me in to teach her 200-hour trainees. And so for those who are unfamiliar, that's usually your entry level into yoga, your first training.
200 hours.
Is your 200 hours. That's the first training you do. And she had said, why I bring Crystal in to teach these anatomy trainings is because she does something I really love, which is she will talk to you about it in a way you can understand. And she said, I have taken lots of classes from neuroscientists and fascia experts. And if I brought them in to teach you anatomy, you would die.
That is a perfect example.
And so she said, Crystal knows all of that, but the way she teaches anatomy is why she is on staff as my anatomy facilitator right now.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the most beautiful compliment, because I didn't start out like that and knowing that. We've done a lot of work together that's improved my skills in that area, but hearing her say that, I thought, whoa, that is important.
Yeah, well, it's important because you have a really high level understanding of subjects because you've devoted yourself, you've looked at the anatomy, you've studied it, you've taught it. And that high level, although valuable, we need to understand it in a way where we can apply it, because education without application doesn't put us anywhere. We have to be able to get the knowledge and go, how do I apply this tomorrow? How do I apply this in the morning? So like you mentioned affirmations, how can I do affirmations right? How can I do it right? Tell me, like, teach me about affirmations. I remember when my mentor taught me, he gave me one affirmation, just like you said. I took it out there and I did it, and I went and I became that person. Yeah. Because my affirmations it was so strong. But how do I do it? Like, can you teach me?
A beautiful low gradient way to stay in our framework of accessing affirmations is to first write down those big lofty goals of affirmations of what you would want in the future. When you're in a space where you feel unafraid, or you consider this is like the end goal, and say, for instance, you said, my affirmation wants to be, I am fearless, or I am brave, or I am abundant, or I am strong, or I show up to every moment in my authenticity. You can write those down at the beginning, and then you have to take one of them, like, I am brave, and you have to step back a little, and I like to put it out here for me as a goal, like physically, somatically, and then come back to myself and say, like we did in the meditation at the beginning of this recording, do I believe that right now? And that's the most important thing with affirmations. And if you can be honest enough with yourself to say, no, but I would like to get there. I would like to desire to believe that even. I would like to be able to find myself in a place where I could consider I could believe that one day. And so if you're honest about where you're at with that, then you can come back, and I come back with my hands and I say, what do I believe? And you can wait for what comes up, and it will come up differently. And I trust each person that it will come up for them. And what's beautiful about that is it's not an outside affirmation that someone's given you. It's something that's come up from the inside. So for example, it might be, I believe that I'm worthy of feeling that way. I believe that I have value to give, and I want to be brave about it. And so you just start there. You start with, your affirmation is not, I am brave and I show up fully in my power and authenticity. You start with, I am worthy, and I am starting to consider I am worthy. And when the blockages come up from that affirmation, you get curious about that. So it's a little bit more of a nuanced work, and it's not so simple. And so that's why it's not out there as the tagline, like tape this affirmation to your mirror and go after it every day. Because it's just a little more gentle and nuanced, but you can take steps there. You can say, step 1, I am worthy, and then get quiet about it and close your eyes and say, where do I believe I'm worthy? What am I worthy of? Where do I believe I'm not worthy? And how can I work into those spaces? And then you are in a feedback loop with yourself, which is really integral and which you can carry with you during the day. And it will not be very long before things come up for you, and the answers will come to you because you're magnetizing them and pulling them in. And it won't be very long before you go back to that mirror and you see your original, I am strong, or I am brave, and you will start thinking, I am feeling that today. And then that is when you say that. And I believe that is a better way, because I have felt it in my body. Be a little more low gradient and take some compassion and some steps towards that. And when you reach that goal, doing it that way, it will be stronger and it will be embodied.
Yeah. And that is, like, when I think of the gradient and how you work with people, I think the first thing I would want to do is help them feel I am worthy, I am enough. So if I'm thinking of that and how I share with people, that's the beginning point of the relationship. That's how I'm working that level of the gradient with those individuals. People that are already there, they can move to another level of gradient. So what we call that in NLP is called an advance, is when we help people make an advance. So if I go, do you feel worthy? And they say yes, and I go, awesome. Now they feel worthy. I'm not going to come back to, do you feel worthy? because they're already committed to me that they feel that way. So if I'm, in speaker mode and I'm in an audience and I'm asking them that question, I'm not going to come back to the I'm worthy. I'm going to help them move forward from there. And that's where we can help people feel advancement, as we can see that. And I love that, because when someone says to me, when they say, Robbie, how did you get the confidence to be a speaker? Because I've given over 5,000 events. I don't really feel nerves as much as I feel excitement. I've learned how to channel the fear a little bit. So I get excited about it. And when I started, I didn't feel that way at all. Like, I was very shy, very introverted. I was a kid at high school that would just walk from class to class. I wasn't like being all outgoing until I got in my core group of friends, and then I was. Well, I had to do that as a speaker. I had to get up in front of cold audiences, which means they didn't know who I was. They knew what my message was going to be about, but they didn't know me. And so I had to gain their connection and build rapport, as quickly as I could with them. And it wasn't easy at first. And what got me through it was affirmations and visualizations. So my mentor taught me this affirmation: I am a master persuader. I am influential. I am compelling. That was the affirmation he taught. And I just did it. And I just said it over and over. Like, I would say it 10 times a day. And he said, just say it 10 times a day. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, because it's literally exactly what I became. I got into promotion. I've been a promoter my whole career. I got into public speaking. I was just on stage all the time. And that's what I was doing, is I was working my way into doing those affirmations. And you mentioned something like, we can become those affirmations. Like, I didn't necessarily want to become all of those things, but I'm grateful that I had the ability to gain influence and to learn how to be compelling when I speak and do those things, or I wouldn't have had a career. I wouldn't have been able to get speaking if those things hadn't become true. But getting to the moment where you look in and go, do I believe that about myself? And even going, do I want that about myself? Yeah. Sometimes I think we have an affirmation and we go, I am brave. Well, do we want to be brave? Is that the thing we actually want? Can we put a word and a frame around it and say, this is what brave looks like, this is what it means? Or is it just a word that we're trying to reach after? I'm brave. What does that mean? That I can put my chest out? That I can shoot a bow and arrow like the movie? What does it actually mean? And so getting further happens during those pauses you mentioned, where you go, how do I actually feel about this? And that's when visualizations became so important. So he started talking to me about visualizations. So I want you to walk us through, because you're so good at this, creating. How does creation work? How does this brain and me thinking about something turn that into something real? I want to know from you.
That's such a great question. I will answer that question. And I do just want to double click on when you said, I have to walk people towards that. And one thing that you do really well in your coaching, which I feel like is a really important part of this, and when I ask you what posture is later, so stick with us on the podcast. We are going to answer this very specifically. You're going to love it. That's one piece of the posture that you did speak to about. I call it embodying, and you called it really feeling the truth of that, and you are that. And I think that's a really important piece that in your coaching, I didn't realize you were doing at the time, but you were doing when we would get a little forward momentum or down the funnel of an idea, and you would pause, and then you would say, talk to me how you would teach it. Like, how do you really feel about this? Like where is the value in this material? And so for those of you who are listening who feel like, whoa, maybe I am high grading, or I've learned these things for myself, but I'm still in a place where I'm unsure how to teach them or how it's going in my classes or my workshops, or how to do that so that I can reach more people or in a different venue. Pay attention to that part when Robbie said, how do you really feel about that? Because that will tap you right back in 1 second to why you're doing it and to know if you're in alignment with your truth and your teaching. And I challenge you to do that, because the answer you will come up with is, oh, I do remember. Oh, I do have value every time, right? The answer is just coming back to the remembrance of saying, this is the material I want to teach, and this is what I do know about it. And just in that moment, you have postured correctly.
Yeah.
You've gotten back to it, right?
Yeah.
So I just did want to double click on that. And there's a lot of just little brilliant nuance things in your coaching. That I'm tagging back to a little bit here, but you'd have to work with you, for months to really get the complete picture and embody that stuff. But that was brilliant.
Well, one thing I want to mention is you literally just kind of talked about what I said is like when you're helping someone at the beginning and you get them to that I am enough part, we got to do that too. Like we have our own gradient that we're walking up on where my goals is to be I want to own a business that does 100 million. Like that's a very lofty goal for a person to have. That's like way up here. I know I got to have $1 million business before I get to that. I've never had a $1 million year yet. And so I'm looking at that going, okay, that's pretty far away. Am I enough? I've got to fall back to that because if I'm not here yet, does that make me feel like I'm a loser or that I'm not there or that I didn't succeed? Or can I fall back on I'm enough? And then that standing strong in that I'm enough will help me get to that next step of moving to that $1 million and then $10 million and then $100 million business that I have. So, learning how to do that for our clients is so important, and learning how to do that for ourselves as well.
Oh, yes. Okay, so you gave it to us. So that will answer your question. That's what we're waiting for. Walk me through how you go I'm going to say on a daily basis, but this is just a process you can employ. The more you do it, the faster it happens. Creation. So your goal was, I want to have a $100 million business.
Yeah.
So the first step in creation is taking that idea and setting it aside for a second and going back somatically to your body, however you want to do this. I like to do it with touch. Also, I identify more with the divine feminine, but we all have it in us. And I want to propose that that's your more powerful energy for creation in your body. So invitation to join me and just rubbing your hands back and forth and remembering that you have tactile feeling and tapping into a little bit of what does it feel like for the hand that's giving, conversely, the hand that's receiving. And then remembering a time when you experienced a miracle. You could also use a time when you were so grateful. The birth of a child, the accomplishment of something you gifted someone and felt so good, something you received and you just felt so worthy and abundant. I'll give you 9 seconds. Use your breath so it softens into your body. And I want you to use that enticing, high vibrational energy to feel that you have and you are. And it is not only possible, but it is now. Your time is up, by the way. So whatever you came to in your mind as the experience, we're going to use. And then we're just going to place both hands on your heart. And breathe more deeply. Focus on the inhale. And I want you to think, we're going to use Robbie's example today, but you can use yours if you've really participated fully and engaged and you've used your experience. Stick with that. I want to have $100 million business. Pause. What is it that $100 million business is going to bring me? What is the underlying feeling? And I'll let Robbie do this verbally with us so we can hear from him. What is it? Impact. I want to make an impact on who, what, how many people?
My original goal was 1 billion people.
What would it feel like in your body to make an impact on 1 billion people? And an impact for what, Robbie?
Positive growth.
Positive growth. What does it feel like and what does it look like to see 1 billion people having positive growth?
Better.
Yeah, a better world and a high vibrational, better world. People who have personal growth. And I know you, so I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's because you know what that will feel like to them, right? What that feels like. Personal growth. Yeah, it's love and it's wholeness. And you've reached that in your journey. And it's beautiful. So we want to bring that back into the feeling, and we're just going to go back to rubbing our hands, and we're just going to imagine that that's what's happening in Robbie's world. People are growing. He is impacting 1 billion people, and they have personal growth, and they are out of their suffering. They're out of their addiction. They are expanding into their light. And the way Robbie's face lights up when he sees people, and I've experienced this, in their full power and their light is catalytic, right? And it just begins to bounce back and forth, and the energy is just so beautiful and high and allowing, and all of that is happening, and it's catalyzing, and it's building, and it's 1 billion people, and it's that feeling. And so we're just going to breathe in, hold our breath, and know that that is happening. Exhale. And you will have a $1 million business, because we will pull it in with that kind of energy every day, with that feeling. Breathe in, hold, and exhale. Feel that in your body? I can feel it.
So excited to have my $1 million business.
$100 million.
$1 million start, and then like you move up a gradient.
Yeah, so that's how we answer your question, is how do you bring thought form and a goal and an idea and catalyze it and create it in a 3D world. And by the way, for those of you who are listening, I think I counted 4 or 5 tactics I used when I taught you that Robbie taught me in framing. And to help teach and make an impact.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I want to talk about that. When you stepped into your power and you were like, what I have is so valuable, I've got to make learning modules, I've got to do webinars, I've got to do trainings, because I've seen you in your power. I've seen you, like, we did a breathwork event, and then when it was done, everyone was like, how can I work with you? How can I do this again? I've had people trying to reach out, like, how do I get certified in breathwork and all this? Because you crushed it. And when we offer good value like that, it is other people look at you and go, I want to do the same. And you inspire people. And they go, I know a lot about breathwork. I can teach this too. And then there's this internal feeling of like, but I'm not good enough, or I couldn't do that, or she's so good, I'll never be as good as her, or whatever. So how did you do it?
Yeah, so I definitely think the thing that we've said 3 times now is just coming back in and remembering what the value is and how you got it. And that's what I liked about your story, is when you first got on that stage and was like, how do I work with these talents? What do I have? What is my message? That work, I think, is the most important. And I love that, because that's the goal of everything. So when those people come to me in my area or you in your area and say, I want that, then the first thing to do is believe them and say, yeah, because you have it, because you need to share it. So let's just get clear on what that is for you.
Yeah.
And that is, I think it has been and continues to be the number one tool, because I am human and nerves get me. And as many days as I spend crushing it, I spend that many days in bed crying, wondering why I exist and what gift I have to give for the world.
So it's so authentically, really that is every,
yes.
Honestly, I've worked with gurus for 20 years. Yes. I've worked with gurus that everybody would know the name. Everybody goes through it, and few people talk enough about it.
And what do you tell them? What do you tell people? I know you and I both attended Tony Robbins recently.
Yeah. Dude, I'm a Tony Robbins disciple from 90s, man. Like I was a kid going, Tony Robbins, I was like learning this stuff. And so, there's a couple of things that you said that I want to touch on, because when someone wants to share their modality or their gift or their subject matter or whatever that they want to share, there's a period of discovery of what it is you actually want to share. Like you got to go through that period of discovery. And so what I do with my clients is I'll have them go and say, what have you done 10,000 hours? Just write it down. Anything. Have you been in a leadership situation where you've been working with managers, you've been working with these? Write that down, leadership. Have you been working with your hands, physically doing something specifically, like you're a carpenter? I think Jesus was a carpenter. He's a pretty good guy. So you get all these different modalities that you spend your time on. Write them all down. Figure out what your mastery skill sets are. Robert Greene's book, Mastery, describes it as like 10,000 hours, which is like 8.5 hours a day, or 8 hours a day for 5.5 years. If you were to work that. So like, what did you do for your job for 5 years? And what was your actual like day to day of what was the things you were doing? Because if your job was really high stress and you had to deal with learning how to, not let the stress get to you, you learned some mental gymnastics that maybe you could teach us. And that's a subject matter that we can all learn from, And so when people go through that discovery phase, it's empowering, but it also, you got to think of the things that you want to teach. So you go through, you write them all down. This is the stuff that I can teach. And then go talk to me about it. Go talk to someone else about it. This is what I did. And then test your energy. How do you feel when you say, oh, I coach little kids. I coach my kids. Like, you watch me, I will change as a human being when I talk about the opportunity to coach kids. I would do it all day, every day if it was my opportunity. It's not what pays the bills right now, but it was the opportunity I always wanted to take with my kids because I love coaching kids. When you talk about the things that I could do as a person, there are things that I can do, but I don't want to do. It doesn't light me up. It doesn't get me up in the morning, So there are things that get you so excited. Like when you start talking about anatomy, you start talking about breath work or meditation or horses, like suddenly now it's like you have this energy toward it. That energy is needed because it takes time to develop the ability to teach people. It takes time to get the brand going and to get people to look at you and say, you're a subject matter expert, you're an authority, you've got credibility, and that time is not easy. That's the hardest of times because you've got it, but you don't have it set up yet. It's not done and it's not visible and it's not, you're not in it. But then you get that one chance to go teach, and it's a tiny little thing, or you have an opportunity to tell someone, and you leave that opportunity to teach someone going, I gotta do this. And you just keep going.
Okay, I wonder if you could pause there and give us a pragmatic tool. Like, what do you tell people when they're getting into that space? How do they get like the 4, 3, 2, 1, go? Like, how do they keep showing up there? I remember one time you told me for you were like, picture this, and it would get you to a place where you could like turn on and do that. So while you're in your discovery and practice phase, which is a huge phase, especially for my listeners, if they're teaching my kind of modalities, or your listeners, if they're doing your kind of modalities and speaking and being on stage, what is that pragmatic tool? Like, what do you tell people to do to tap back in and like keep going?
Well, the book Start With Why is like really important to me for this, because you talk about going back to the I am enough moment. You get to that a little higher up and you go, I am enough to teach this. I'm enough to give this value. I'm enough to do this. And if you get to that point and you say, I am enough to do that, you've got to hold your feet strong in that part as well. That's another advance, is what we call that in NLP. Now we're here. I am programming, in neurolinguistic programming, we're programming our brain to believe something, or we're helping other people in programming their brain when we understand persuasion and influence. So when I'm doing that and I say I am enough and I've made that choice, I've got to know why I'm enough and what it is the end result is for. And so I do have to have the discovery of saying, okay, this is what I can teach. Why should I? What is it going to do long term for me and for other people? Like, when we get that why and we've got it, I can't remember who said it. He said, if your why doesn't make you cry, you got to give it another try. So you get your why, you write it down, and that's what you come back to. So I literally, when people would come to me at events and they would say, I got to do this, but I don't have any money, I don't have the ability to get started now, I would say, write down why you want this so bad. Write it down, because this is the tough time. This is the time when you don't have the ability to do it financially or for whatever reason, circumstances, whatever it is. But if you know why you want it, it's not going to last, because you keep coming back to that and say, why do I want it? And Robert Kiyosaki, who I got to work with for a couple years, he always said, if you say I can't afford something, then you turn the brain off. But if you say, how can I afford something? You turn the brain on. Well, that's the same thing when people say, I can't do that. I can't ever be a teacher of modalities. I can never do that. Versus, how can I develop the strength and the wisdom to be able to do it? Like if I wanted to teach, let me think of something I don't know how to do. The bagpipes.
Okay.
Give me 5 years and I could teach it. Because you just hand me a bagpipe, give me a teacher that shows me how to do it. I work on the bagpipe for the next 5 years. In 5 years, I'm a subject matter expert, and I could be the best bagpipe player in the world. Maybe that $100 million business, we throw that out. Maybe I should just focus on bagpipes.
Yeah. Well, that's an important thing you get to is when you get to the why and you start reframing and say, how can I come to this understanding? How can I gain that skill? How can I achieve X, Y, and Z? Immediately, you're going to be faced with, do I want to?
Yeah.
And that's the important question.
Yeah.
But if you're always saying I can't, there's some subtle energies and there's some subtle, like you said with NLP, traumas or reframing or a belief system.
Yeah.
That's important to get to. And so that's why what you said is really important. Because if you can do the how can I, you will immediately be faced with a but do I want to?
Yeah.
And then what have I now been covering up with? I can't afford, or I can't, or it's impossible. And that's just an unconscious belief system. So that's powerful.
Yeah.
So you tell people to say, how can I? Instead of, I can't.
Yeah, well, I teach them to get to their why first.
The why first.
Like my first, when I onboard a client, we go through their whole story. We figure out what their mastery skill sets are. We figure out, what it is that they can provide. We, create all of that. And, as we then create that, we're building their understanding of their own story. And I go to my next module, which is like, what is your intention in using this? What is the intention in doing this? And once we define their intention and we say, write down your why, I go back to it constantly. So remember what we talked about in the beginning, this is why you want to do it. As we've gone through with any of that change, are you still there? And the reason I'm doing it is to create posture, because I'm asking them to say, do you feel this way? Because if I just go, you feel that way, right? And they go, no. That's not them feeling that way. Right. It's like, well, I could go, do you feel that way? And they'd say yes, but that's not maybe the best example. But I need to get them to verbalize. Mm-hmm. I just did a video on this on Instagram. David Shammy was like the best speaker, man. He was like the guy the whole audience was just eating at his hands. It was so fun to watch. But David used to say, if I say it, it's true. But if they say it, it's gospel. Now take that as a coach. Take that as a trainer. And go, okay, if I'm up here on stage and I go, these are the 3 most important things, 1, 2, 3, and I say it, it's true because I'm the authority. But if I go, guys, number 1 was this. Does that sound important? Does that sound important? Tell me why it's important. And then I have them explain it to me. Now I'm no longer the one going, this is important. They're the one saying it's important. And if I said it was true, but if they say it's gospel, if I have a question pattern I love, where it's called A or B plus Y, where you go, like I'll give you an example. I say, is it good to get started with personal development sooner or later? Which one do you think?
Sooner.
Why?
Because the sooner you can tap into that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So did you see how now you start saying it to me? That pattern is in place to help people be powerful. It's not in place for me to manipulate the situation. It's for me to go in and say, can you explain it? Because if I explain it, it's true. But if you explain it, you're going to believe it. And so we want to help people get to that point. So as a coach, we learn, or as a trainer, we learn how to get people to say the things that they want. Because as they express them, they become more true for them.
So beautiful. So before we fully get into that definition of posture that I promised you is coming, I think we can pause here and talk about something that's really important to my listeners and people who teach the modalities that I teach, which is the ethics of it. And we've talked a lot around framing and posturing, and you touched on something which is getting it to come from the inside out from them. Whether you're teaching or coaching or you're holding space or you're using healing modalities or you are up on stage to be influential, there is a power dynamic there. And there's something that I know you've learned deeply in your life, and maybe you'd be willing to share a little bit, but also I've learned in my modalities, which is pointing back to the inner knowing of that person and getting them, as you said, they say it, it's gospel, but also just being very discerning about the fact that what we are doing when we sit in these positions is supporting if we have extra energy to give and showing the way by example. If people decide that's an example they want to follow, or there's something that they like or is positive to be achieved there, and they may decide no, and that's okay too. But if they do decide Robbie has something I would like to emulate, we're not taking that power away from them, and we're not convincing them in an ethical way outside of what would be their most inner truth. Like the coaching is structured around them finding what that is for them. And that can be misconstrued and misused in my modalities and in your modalities, and even with the best intentions. So what do you want to say about that?
Well, this is a big subject. I've got a couple of stories if I can, because
Yes,
I remember, because I think what you're saying is like ethics are important. These skills are powerful. Use them wisely. That's the way I see it.
That's
I have a
disclaimer.
I have a disclaimer that I use for every client before I teach them. You remember going through this, and it says at the end, that your influence affects other people's lives. Use it ethically. And I asked you, will you participate in that ethics disclaimer? And you said yes. Do you remember this?
Yes, I do remember it. And why I love it so much is because especially in maybe a little bit in yoga, we go through that, but a lot in energy training and things like that, we go through who is the ultimate power and what are we channeling? And it's never me, right? We're never outsourcing to another person.
Yeah.
No matter what may go on, you have your ultimate sovereignty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is the case. And also, when you have an understanding of the way groupthink works, and groupthink is when you're talking in a setting where there's more than one individual. So there's you, and now there's more than one person. So I'm talking to an audience. I could be talking to an audience of 300, 3,000. That's groupthink. It's a different form of communication. And we're affected differently because now if we're extremely impacted by social pressure, like we're the type that is really like they're here, there's people around,
I've done
then
that.
we are impacted. Like an easy example is hand raises, because I focus on hand raises with my speakers. It's like if you don't get a hand raise on an important question, then everyone else in the audience is going to limit their belief because of that. So if I said, raise your hand if you think that could really help you in your life, and I do this, besides the sweat tacos, if I had nobody raise hands in the audience, well, now everyone that may have believed that it was valuable is going, wait, no one raised their hand. Like if you were the one person that raised your hand in the audience, you're going, oh, never mind. So it's so important, and that is not present when we're talking like this. We're not having that same impact. So social pressure is something that we got to understand. And I learned it like the first time when I would have been like 24, 25. And when we think of hypnosis, people think of hypnosis and they think they get into this state where they would just act so silly. Because you go to a stage hypnotist and you see them and they do these fun things. You've been to one of these?
Yeah.
So they do these fun things, and they're, it's all part of his plan from the beginning. He uses hypnotic patterns to help people who are susceptible to hypnosis come forward. And guess who those people are?
The group mentality.
The people that want to be there. So all you have to do is, when you're doing stage hypnosis, is figure out who's the people that want to be up here. That's what you're doing. You're not literally putting people into because hypnosis does not take away people's free will. So I got hypnotized when I was 24 by the best hypnotist in the world. His name's Marshall Silver. So we're in a crowd. There's 1,500 people. I'm in the audience. There's a bunch of people on stage, and then he starts pulling people up from the audience who are like, hey, who wants to participate? And we fill the stage, and then he goes through this thing where he has our hand, ties a balloon to one arm, tells us it's raising, and then suddenly our arm is up in the air. So I was so susceptible to hypnosis because I was working with my mentor every night on this. He would hypnotize me. He would stand on me. He would put like 2 chairs and have me lay in them and say, "You're powerful." And he'd stand on me and I'd be like laying like this. "You're so powerful. Watch this." And he was like 6'8", 300 pounds, like big guy. Not 300, maybe 270. Don't watch this, Andy. So anyways, he would stand on me and he would do this. And it was like the Tony Robbins stuff to like get you there. Yeah. And he taught me that like, you're not getting people to do things they wouldn't normally do. You're just helping them feel safe enough to do it. And so I get hypnotized by Marshall. I'm up on stage and I get selected as one of the 10 people. And the whole show starts and everyone's doing their thing. And I remember exactly how I felt. I was totally there. I was totally conscious. I was listening to what he had to say. I trusted he wasn't going to put me in danger. And I put on a big show. I would have done all of that, even if I wasn't hypnotized. I would have done it if I trusted the person. And so the susceptibility that I had to his hypnosis was so there because I trusted him, because my mentor said, "This guy's incredible. He's the best hypnotist." So I got fully hypnotized. I left that experience going, that was just like watching TV. I just was focused. That was it. I was focused. And that's what hypnosis does. So as a speaker, when we're using NLP, we're using a similar thing. We're helping people get under some sort of trance. Because when I tell a story, people run a movie inside their head about that story. And now I've got them because they're not thinking of anything else. They can't think of 2 things. They're thinking of my story. So it helps me kind of guide the process. So when you have that ability, because you've got groupthink, you can get people into a half day stupor, because you can get them into a trance when you're speaking to them. That's dangerous to the wrong person. And so I had some experiences where I taught these things to people, and then I watched them do it to a whole crowd. It was a specific crowd in Ontario, California. It was at the Doubletree Hotel. I remember everything about it. It was, I think, it's Vineyard Avenue. I mean, I just remember being so impacted by this because I was like, what did I do? I taught this individual how to do these things, and look how he's doing this. And I stepped back from coaching for a while because I was like, just torn, because I'm like, how can I teach this to someone when they're going to use it that way? That's why I use a disclaimer. But as I have gotten to the place where I go, I know this is valuable. And I had to stand in my own power and go, you can't shy away from teaching it. You have to teach people and show them how to be accountable. And I used my disclaimer to do that. Here's the accountability. Now go out and do the right thing with it. So the way I do it is have people commit to it early on, so that they're committed to the ethics of it.
I love that. And it kind of reminds me of like Hitch, because you can also choose your clients. And anyone in my world is known or learns quickly that you learn to say no and follow your intuition with certain clients, and yes to other clients, after an initial kind of call. And I know you do that.
I have so many thoughts in my head.
I know. I feel like we're opening a can of worms, but I did just want to get you on recording, just speaking to that, because it's beautiful for people to hear. And it's just another remembrance to say, you can be sovereign even in your teaching and your coaching, right? You can be sovereign in yourself when you're receiving, and you can also be sovereign when you're teaching. And then at the end of the day, you're really just in control of yourself and sharing your light and gift, and you're not in control of how that's received or what that is ultimately used for. So you just keep coming back to self, to self, to self.
Yeah, you empower people, and the difference between, like, speaking is a superpower. Like, we've got to understand that. Like, when we're in yoga, okay, and we're sitting there and everyone is dead silent, and it's our voice that's creating where we're going, that's a superpower, where you have the ability in that moment as a good instructor who knows how to facilitate and has great language and can help empower people. How many times have you had people come up after yoga and they sat in that meditation, and then they come up to you after and just said, I had this experience and this is what happened, and I feel like this, and I know I can do this now, and I can go forward because of it. That happens because of the way we are. I mean, it's partly the words we use. It's the tonality. It's the way our body language is. It's our love. It's all of that stuff. But it literally can change people. So it is a mantle that we can take on. That's why I think some people Well, I don't think it's why people don't do it. I don't think people think that much like I do.
Yeah.
But I think people don't do it because they're unsure that people would actually care. And then all you got to do is go look on TikTok to see who has followers. People have followers and they have the lamest, things that they do. I shouldn't say that lame. They have stupid TikTok videos about cats.
Yeah.
And, there is a crowd for every single expertise. There is a crowd for it. And now we have social media to put it out there so that we can actually share it. So anyone who is listening to this saying, I have a special modality, I have a special gift, I have a special thing that I can share with someone, do it.
Yeah, and Robbie can help you do it.
My advice is always go book a speech. Just go book one. Just get started.
And not a lot of people
do now?
Yeah, not a lot of people are into the fire like you do. Run headfirst into the
fire.
Ones
that are the ones I work with.
That's
because
true.
Literally, like, they'll hire me and I go, okay, hire me, be booking speeches. All right. I had one lady the other day. She hasn't hired me yet, but she will. She's got 500 speeches is what she wants. That's a lot, dude. I'm like, okay, you want to sign a 5-year contract with me? Let's do this. Okay, that's 100 a year.
Perfect.
That's
There's your $100 million career right there.
Yeah. So.
Well, that can be our anatomy plug for the podcast then. What you said about not only the pragmatic tools and the influential nature and the low gradient way you can learn, all the things that you can learn about presenting your information and being confident and living that and being influential and delivering that. There is something to be said for vibration, right? Vibration, frequency, sound. And this modality is one where you are using your voice to do the things. So in that, your voice carries a vibration and your body is mostly water. And so you can program vibration into sound and you can program vibration into water. And that's the simplest way to say it. And that has power. It's like the singing bowls or the hertz you use. Emotions have a frequency. Sound has a frequency. You'll notice when we get really excited, our voices will elevate actually in tone and frequency and vibration. And so
get emotional.
This is so great. There's a reason for that. And it is truth, and it will put that vibration forth, and people do have their sovereignty and choice to receive it and be influenced by it or not. But one truth is we are all connected. And there isn't a truth in that you can completely cut yourself off from the rest of people in creation. We are here together, and behind the veil, we are all one. And in front of the veil, we can say Robbie is separate than Crystal, and we have our different ego identities. But that duality is always at play. And so that's the foundation to say, when you're talking with vibration and passion, you can say something, and if the underlying emotion is frustration and intolerance, it doesn't matter how beautiful your words are, people will feel frustration and intolerance.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how difficult a conversation you have to have, if you can, and please do, get yourself to a place of love and compassion and goal setting and how can we figure this out, and you approach a conversation in business, in your marriage, in anything like this with your children. It doesn't matter how difficult the subject matter is, they will feel love and containment. Yeah. And you sing. I know you sing. I sing.
Yeah.
We do sound as therapy too. And music as an art is even more powerful than verbalized word, because it's all vibrational intention. And people sometimes are less listening to the words, or sometimes there's not words when you sing.
Yeah.
And so what are you feeling when you're up on stage? You played last night. What were you feeling when you played for that room full of people, that event?
It's so interesting going from speaking to music and performing, because some of it translates and moves over and that. It's as far as like my prep, that translated just fine, because it was like, for speaking, I said, get through your speech 5 times every time before you give it. And for me, I'll play every song I play before I perform it. I'll make sure I practice it 5 times and I hit it 5 times before I perform it live. So that went well. Like getting ready, like I get so nervous when I get ready to play music. And I sometimes get nervous when I speak. I told you, like, I'm pretty cool and I channel it.
Yeah.
I've had a couple moments where I like had near panic attacks. You know, you get up in front of 1,000 people and you didn't have any time to prep, and they asked you last minute to speak, and you're like, okay, I can do that, you know, and then you got 25 minutes to fill. You know, you it's stressful. You know, it's like they're all looking at me, but I also have a process. Like, I have a plan when I go. You know, I've got this acronym MOVE. You know, it's mindset first. Like, I got to get my mindset right, and that includes my visualization of how am I going to get through to this. I'm visualizing the end of my presentation. People coming to me saying, "Thank you, that was amazing. I got so much. I got value," and that's my focus. Is my mindset is the end. I'm not like sitting there stressing about the middle. I'm thinking about the end now. So the outcomes that we need to provide for them, if I know the outcome that they want is they want to learn, like, for music, the outcome would be, you know, they want to have fun. If I know that's the outcome, then I'm going to program fun songs. I'm not going to program lame songs. If they want to be chill and they want to be like hanging out, you know, then I'm going to program slower songs. And so I look at the outcomes. Same thing with speaking. What does the audience want? Do they want to learn something? Are they trying to overcome something, you know? And so I program those outcomes. I have that in place. So I'm thinking about the outcomes. What is it that I'm doing again? What is it that I'm helping them with? Because that helps me go, oh, that's what I'm helping them with. That energizes me. So V, it's the N-O-V, it's my voice. So I've got, like, when people get up on stage, their voice, like that tonality you talked about, nerves can change your voice the moment you get on stage, and now your voice is like different because you're like up there and so excited. Hey, I'm so excited to be here. And you're like, whoa, did that happen? I just made that noise. So getting your voice ready. And so I go through the Anchorman thing. Like, I literally do. I do it every single time. I go, unique New York, how now, brown cow. And I'll do it like 5 or 6 times, and people are laughing at me, and they're going, why are you doing that? Because it's stretching my face. It's getting my voice ready. It's getting all those things ready. And that way, when I get the mic, I don't go, hey, everyone. You know, like, that happens so often. So V is voice. I got to get my voice ready because I got to get the vibrations going. And then E is my energy. I got to get my energy a step above theirs. Not too high above, because then I look really too energetic. But I want to be above where they're at. And so I can start raising them up, and then I kind of build to a crescendo as I go. So that preparation that I always went through to get me ready as a speaker, same exact thing that I do when I go up to be a musician. So all of that was the same. And then I get on stage, and it's like, as a speaker, all I had to do was talk. But now I've got to think of instrument, I've got to sing, I've got to hit the notes, I got to make sure that my drummer and the bass player, and we're all in sync, and like we're all working together. Like, it's stressful.
Yeah.
So I didn't enjoy performing at first because it was so stressful. But I learned, like anything else, if you want to be good, you got to go through the hard stuff. Yeah. You got to go through hard, like, and so I had a couple performances where I was like, I was not good. And that was hard because I was like listening to it going, okay, people say you're good, but they don't mean it. You know?
And do you think they can feel that? Like, because if your nerves are in the music, like, can you watch the audience, like, kind of be like,
you can feel them cringing.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Like, yeah.
It's so hard because you got to finish the song, dude. And if it's a sucky song, like I played Wallflowers, like One Headlight. I hate that song, but my bandmates want to play it. And I was like, all right. So we're playing it. I'm like 3 verses in going, man, we still got another verse and a chorus. This is just like, and so, but anyway, that battling through the pain, the tougher part, now I can perform. Like, last night felt like the first time ever. Like, I was dancing on stage, and I don't dance. Like, I was the first time I was like into it and having a good time, and you know, because I'm kind of like getting over that hump. So it gives me a lot of confidence that other people can do things, because I look at that and go, you guys don't know. Like, I didn't just get up on stage and start playing music. I didn't just get up on stage and become a speaker. I was staying up till 2 a.m. in my buddy Andy's room, just going through practicing scripts, saying, what if this happens? What do you do here? And it was like so much work to learn it. And that's why I started to put all this framework to it, because he was teaching me stuff that he just had in his head. He's like, I've done all these speeches. This is how it works. So I was like creating a formula of what he was that he was doing, because I knew what he was teaching me. Dude, I felt so empowered. Like, can you imagine at 22, like 25 years old, just being able to stand up in front of a room of people with no fear? Like, I was so confident because he made me feel that way.
But that's the magic. And I think that is when something's created out of that, that's the posturing that we're about to talk about, right? Where you can stand up in that and you can say, guys, look, we see you. We know where you're at. Like, we know what you're going through. And what that felt like for you last night, to feel that on the stage, and I'm guessing probably to watch that being mirrored out in those people who were enjoying it.
They were dancing.
Yeah, they were dancing.
Actually danced. They were slow dancing when I did slow songs. Yes. They were boot scooting bogeying when I was doing other dance songs. It was so fun.
That's so cool. And that's a principle that I learned from my shaman when we sit in medicine. They use the music on purpose to construct how the journey is going to go.
Yeah. Well, there's another thing before we get to Posh that I want to mention, because you talked about how vibrations matter and how the vibrations of your voice. And there was a study on this, and this is like an old study. Everyone's probably seen it yet, that shows like 93% of communication is not the words.
Right.
7% is words. The rest is nonverbal communication, tonality, our body language, and so those things that really affect, there's science behind it too. They're called mirror neurons, and I experienced this on stage. So mirror neurons fire, and when we're in a group, we start to fire together, and so the vibration starts to happen together. So I learned about frequency and vibration later. I knew about mirror neurons. I knew the neuroscience of it before I knew like the energy side of it, and so. But I felt it. Like I had 5,000 speeches that were the same speech with I would swap out product and stories and stuff like that, but I had the same exact formula. So I would have like the best clinical study, because I go in and say one thing. The next time, the same day, I would do the same speech, different crowd. I would change one word and see what would happen. And so I was just like fiddling all the way through. So I felt mirror neurons because I learned rapport, which is the first concept I teach, which is connection. It's not trust as much as it's a connection to either an idea or a person or a solution or whatever. And so I would work on rapport, but I could feel a shift. Like when you can say my audience was with me, like I could feel when they were with me, because you can see it in the head nods. You can see it in the participation goes up and people start to get to the front of their seat, You can start to actually feel it happen. Well, that's when the mirror neurons are firing, and all of us are starting to feel it. And it's the stadium feel. Like you go to a baseball game or a football game in a stadium, and all of a sudden you feel the momentum of the whole game, and everyone can feel it and sense it. That's all that chemistry that's happening inside us. So there's a scientific reason that goes on, and we have to learn how to speak our truth and how to be authentic, because no matter how hard we try to hide behind words, eventually the way that we feel about it eventually comes out. And you get enough time with someone, talking to them, eventually they break and the words aren't enough, and the way they truly are inside, it comes out. And so getting to being authentic, being okay with your words, here's like best tip I can give people. Listen to your self-talk. Like that is so hard for people to do. Go watch your video.
Do you feel the cringe?
Go watch your podcast. Look at this. It's like, here's your video, Crystal. 20 minutes. You just spoke in front of people. Go watch yourself and go here. So first time, watch it through. Second time, turn the volume off. Just your body, and watch yourself. See if you think you believe yourself just without the words. Because when you can see it with the words, there you go. But when you see it without the words, now you can really go, do they believe what they're saying? Or do I believe what I'm saying? As I'm doing it, because you'll know what you're saying. Yeah. So.
Fortunately or unfortunately, that is what I was thinking the whole time you were talking to us about this, is you can't hide. You can't hide from yourself. So there's at least initial momentum and bravery you need to tap into. There's an initial running towards the fear that you've got to be able to do these things. And if you want it, which I know a lot of us want that, then you have got to recognize your deep why, because when you start running towards that, it's going to feel like what we just felt when Robbie said, film yourself and watch it. It was like, I could feel it in my body. It was like my voice coach will record the song at the beginning, and then we'll work through some things, and then she'll record me at the end. And it takes me a solid 48 hours, if not more, for me to listen to that recording. And that's always my homework, is to go home and listen to it. And she's so positive, and she'll say, find the places where you were like, that's it. That's what I want to sound like. That was the moment, and repeat it, because that's not what's happening. It's the 99 other moments where I'm going, that wasn't the sound I thought I was making. And those weren't the tools I thought I was using. It's pretty horrible. Like, I'm still feeling it in my body. Thank you for that. I need to calm myself back down.
Well, but I can tell you what happens, though, is
yes, tell us why it's so useful.
Because people, the reason, well, I'll tell you why we experience that, though, like in a hack to get through it. Because when we are talking, and as a speaker coach, I have so much input because I watch you, I talk to you, I know where your background is, I know everything, so I can go and like really understand someone. That's what I'm trying to do. And so when someone's talking, a lot of the times they're worrying about if their words are good enough. It's not a lack of belief sometimes. It's I know so much about this, I'm just not saying the thing I want, I'm not saying it how I want to. Instead of not believing the words, they just are doubting that the words are good enough. So there needs to be like this. So I have a 5-step process, like plan, practice, and then present. So during the planning phase, we need to get it to a place where we're comfortable. And then we practice. And when we practice, we're hard on ourselves. We go watch it. No, we should change this. We change it. We go do it. And we're hard on ourselves during practice because practice is hard. If you've ever been an athlete, if you've ever had anything like that you work really hard at becoming a musician, an artist, or anything, it's hard to just grind through practice sometimes. And so when you do that and you're ready to present, you just have to go, already did it, already judged myself, already went through it all, time to present, I am gonna do this. And you stand on that stage and you root yourself to the stage, and you just go with the information that you were beating yourself up on maybe the day before. But you can't do that when you present. Because if you're doing it when you present, you're like, well, they don't, first of all, they have no idea what you're about to say. Nobody does, except you. And so whatever you say is good enough. And they don't know the difference. So you just got to back your own words with your own belief. And so when you're saying it, it actually is coming out and you're believing it. Once you're done presenting, you've got the video, you've got the audio. Now we can go and be hard on ourselves if we want to. And so the 4 steps, so it's plan, practice, present, and then measure. So now we watch ourselves and we measure and go, okay, can I measure? Was I good with body language? Was I good with my with the content that I was providing? Was I good with my call to action if I have one? You know, like whatever it is I'm doing. So then I measure how I did, and then I make adjustments, and then I'm back to the very beginning. Okay, I make adjustments. What's the plan for the next one, you know? But if we don't do that switch from practice to present mode and get okay with ourselves, and first of all, if we didn't do the practice, we're going to be doing that when we present. And that's like probably the number one mistake people make. I would say in any type of speaking is people don't practice enough. They'll just go, I got it up here. I got it up in my mind. I know exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, cool. What happens when someone's phone rings and you lose your spot and you don't know where you were at? What are you going to do? You know, there's so many things that can happen. So practice is so crucial, and then letting the practice go and just becoming presenter mode. You're in presenter mode. That's not hard on myself. That's get the content that I know is what I planned for.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and that feels good because I remember, and I know you've seen me and you've told me to put my notebook away and stop worrying about that now and just go live from what has been set in. It's there is there. I love that. It's just, I just have to comment on, oh, it's such a cool skill. It's so cool that you spent half your lifetime honing and practicing that skill, and to watch you be able to teach it, frame it, have the little things that you've created, just like the knowledge and the wisdom, because like you said, you have gone through that, and to be able to like I can feel it in your body, like you can lean on that, like just expertise and knowledge, and to be sitting where you are today and saying, it's not for nothing. And I've done all of this work, but it's just really cool to be sitting here with you today, to be at the precipice of your $100 million business, and to have your tools, and to have like these things that are so powerful and helpful in our lives right now. And you're giving out so many free tools on your Instagram right now. I love that new content.
I'm trying to figure out Instagram, and the only thing I know how to do is like mostly just value stuff, because I went from selling to teaching selling, and so now that I'm teaching mostly, that's the content that I have, and so
and isn't it just fun to be in the presence of someone in their expertise? I just want to comment on that.
It's so fun. It is so fun. I
It
feel
is
the
so
same way
fun.
about you.
Yeah.
What you say matters so much to me, because I know I've spent a lot of time working with you on these things, and when you do that, and I spent so much time building it and helping people, like when you see someone who can apply it and go, I use this and I use this and I use this, I'm like, that's why I got into teaching other people. Like long story short, I stopped speaking full time because I wanted to help other people learn this skill, because I was running into people all the time that were saying, I learned this, I know this, and I'm like, why don't you speak about it? And they're like, well, I could never be a speaker. And I'm like, I'm a speaker. Like, you don't know me when I was a kid. Like, I was not going to be a speaker.
Yeah.
And I just happened to do it. I think I ran into someone last night, and we knew each other in ninth grade. And I wanted to straight up ask him, like, what did you think I was going to end up?
Most
because
likely
I was, like,
to.
singing, and I was doing this. I didn't play music.
Most likely to
then.
run away and join the circus.
Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking. I thought I would play baseball. All the way, growing up, I was
most likely to be a pro baseball player.
I was not even good. I was never, ever going to be a baseball player, but in my head, I was there. So, but I've used that type of mentality of like, I'm not there yet, but I'm working towards it to fuel me my whole life, because I've had to switch and jump into a bunch of different modalities a lot.
Yeah, and I love how good you are at deferring and compliments too. So also, I want to say again, like, thank you so much for being here and having done all that work and framing this up for us to learn, and for being in this space to teach it, because you do have value to offer. And your answer is thank you.
I appreciate
I'll receive that. Yeah.
I will. And that's my answer. Thank you for telling me what my answer is. So you got to get to posture though.
What is posture, and how do you define it?
Posture is like my favorite definition for like a quick, here's what it is to stand tall in your own shoes. Like, that's like standing tall in my own shoes. Like, people stand tall with false confidence, but standing tall and truly being able to have my shoes on and be me 100%, be able to see myself in the mirror, know my value, that's the way I should feel for posture. Posture in the sense of persuasion and influence, and teaching and audiences and groupthink and speaking, I like to kind of use a visual. And really, there's three main elements in posture. Like, the first is I have to have the ability to provide something. Like, if I want to have, like, posture to me means a positioning of, like, if someone's an expert, their positioning is better in that subject than someone that's not an expert, because they have more knowledge. So it's a position. It's not prowess. It doesn't mean like I'm better. It just means I have a different position because I have an understanding. So my position's here because of the amount of knowledge that I have. So we have to have the ability to provide something of value. Okay. And then the second is the audience, they need to have a desire or a want for what we have to offer. So if I offer meditation, and what that does is it helps people to overcome traumas, then the audience would need to have a desire to overcome traumas or use meditation in some way in order for them to have a desire to want to learn from me, if I'm offering meditation. So I have to have something to offer, they have to have a desire, and then I have to remain detached from whether or not they want it from me. Because if someone's not on the journey to receive the information that I have, I can't let that sway my belief. Because the information that I have, if we remember everything that I've said up to this point, it's a mastery skill set. It's a skill set that I've worked on for a long time. It's something I know I believe in. I've got this. If I'm teaching it, if I'm teaching something and someone else doesn't want that information, that's okay for them. Maybe in the future they will, and I just look at everything on a timeline. Maybe not now, but maybe in the future. So a no doesn't mean no, it means not now. In the future. And I have to feel that way about my information, Otherwise, I look needy to give them the information, and need is an invisible trait. We don't know why someone's needy. We just know it makes us uncomfortable. So when you were talking about that earlier, when you were like, tonality, if you're not saying it, you're speaking your truth, people will feel the vibrations. They feel the neediness through the vibration, and then they go, that makes me feel it. And they can't put the finger on it, which is almost even worse, because they're like, why don't I believe them? Or why can't I hear them? Or why can't, there's just something off about it, And so we have to learn to believe our own words. And when we do, when we get to that state, we have to hold true to the fact that they may not believe in those words. And that's okay. And if we can do that in that posture, because then I can speak with so much authority and power and strength, and you don't like it, that's okay. There's others that are looking for that information and do. It doesn't mean I don't take criticism, or I don't listen, or don't have, people can't ask questions about what it is or any of that. It's that I have to know the information that I know. And when I do, I can have posture.
That sounds so amazing. I know that probably everyone listening right now is like, that. I want that. I want to feel that. I'm thinking back to all the times I didn't feel that, and I want to feel that. And how can I be there in more experiences?
Let's talk about what we did with you, because there were times in the middle of the webinar where you were like, it's like a lot of work, and there was like trying to get people registered and everything. And there were times I remember just pulling out and going, whoa, wait, what are you doing today? Why are you doing it? And we go right back to what we talked about earlier. Yeah. And you and I did that, where you were like, okay, you're right. I have done this. I can do that. And sometimes it takes someone else bringing us to that realization, which is why it's so important to have mentors and people that you surround yourself with, people that help raise you up. Yeah. Because a rising tide raises all boats. And if we're around a bunch of people that are not raising us, then we're going to lower. And so we need to do that. We need to put ourselves in situations where they teach us. Eventually, though, it's got to come from within. At some point, it's got to internally be us going.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And it's even more important because those moments, like what happened before our last event, when I had a couple detrimental experiences in news right before I was supposed to go teach some of these things. And I went to my husband and was like, so this just happened, and now I don't know how to show up. And he was like, so just do whatever you would tell your clients to do in this moment. Exactly. And then go teach that tonight. And I was like, yeah, because this is the pulling yourself up by the bootstraps moment. So I have had Robbie sit across the table from me and be like, we're not at the point where you question yourself. We are already this far into this path, and we're here where you, Crystal, need to remember why you're doing this and what it is you're giving. And then I sat across from my husband saying that, and we've been there enough times that when there was nobody there for me, I was like, you're right, here's the method. I will, step down it myself. It got me there. I wrote it down. That's what I taught that night. I don't know if you knew that. That's why I had my purple notebook that night. That is how I decided what that method would be that night, because it works. Yeah. Because when you apply it, it works.
Yeah. That's such good advice. Is like, whenever I'm like having someone teach something, I'm saying, well, how do you use it? How do you use what you're teaching? And then teach us those things, because education that we're not utilizing, once again, is not going to get us anywhere. Like, it's just taking up space. We've got to learn how to apply it. And application comes inside those moments where you're struggling, and then you have a modality where you go to it. And tell me about that moment. But people don't get authentic enough sometimes to go, I have those moments too. They'll instead say, anytime that you feel this, you can do this. It's like, instead, tell me what you did in your times of trouble, because you're not fooling anybody to think that nobody goes through it. There's not a person on the planet that doesn't go through times of trouble. And how we all handle it is, it's really important to learn how to do it well.
I think that's maybe the ending note that I really wanted to make sure we got in, especially when I have you as a guest, is because ultimately we are learning these things because you can't hide. And ultimately the idea and the journey is your own progress and sovereignty and accessibility to joy and power, right, for good. And I think these modalities provide that, and that's why I love them. And also, I feel like the way you coach is in real life, and I don't know how well I have shown that or we've exemplified that on this podcast, hopefully well, because they can feel it through posture. But you are very compassionate and very encouraging and very allowing. And I think that's an important quality in a coach. And like we said, I never not have a coach or mentor in my life. I know they're the same way. But important quality is someone who will raise the tide for all the boats. And I know you have that. And in that spirit, which is, there were some uncomfortable things said today. There were some hard things. There were some advancements that the listeners may be like, wow, I can't imagine how I'd be there, but I could grasp onto this. I just do want to make sure that people feel our authenticity and that we were there and we are there a lot of the times, and that the best coaches, to me, I have found, exemplify that compassion and encouragement and allow for those moments of the self-reflection and the learning and the hard things and taking care of that, and then coming back at it with confidence and support. And I think it's really important. And so I appreciate that in you and you as a coach and a mentor, and that's been beautiful. And I'm wondering if there's anything along those lines or something else that's just in your heart as a message or something you want to share.
Yeah, I was just thinking the whole time you were saying is like life is just a matter of chapters. And the chapter that we're in is not always the most beautiful chapter. But it comes to a close and a new chapter opens. And that next chapter could be great, could be tougher, could be whatever, but it's a new chapter. And as long as we continue to roll through that and we put ourselves in the place of good habit, I always go back to my habits no matter what. Because I've had career change, I've had faith transition, I've had a lot of things that put me in a category of you're not going to be able to get through this. Your marriage won't last, your positivity won't last, your compassion won't last, your belief in yourself won't last. Man, I wake up every day so excited. I do, I genuinely do. I get up ready for the day, and I've done that always, no matter how hard. It's always worth waking up and just going, I'm going to make the best of this day, and then tomorrow will come, I'll make the best of that day, and then whatever. But I've learned to do that, and that has helped me to stay in that mode of being able to be an influence on others, because I could have let myself give up on a lot of different things that I know now. Had I done that, I would not have been able to provide some impact into people's lives that, humbly I know is important to them. So, whatever chapter you're in, just keep going.
It's a beautiful message of hope. Yeah. If any of you guys have that or feel like that, I love that message from the other side here.
Thank you. The other side, and still on like the side of like struggle all the time with something, but on the other side of certain things, I feel like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for letting me be sharing your gifts with me. You have impacted me in so many different ways, and teaching me, and even with the meditations today, I'm like, oh man, these are things that I can employ into my life. I can put this into my system. So thank you for your expertise.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure. Satnam.
Thank you for listening. Connect with me on Instagram at Crystal Zinn Yoga. Subscribe on my website at crystalzinnyoga.com to receive tools and practices for your holistic journey, and to be the first to know about offerings, workshops, trainings, and retreats. We live in powerful times that require courage, bravery, compassion, authenticity, community, and grounding. You're not alone. Check out my free content, classes, and meditations on YouTube under Crystal Zinn Yoga, and have a beautiful day. Satnam.